Leani slowly climbed out of the carriage as Jason grabbed a multicolored tunic and put it on. To her surprise, her mother was exiting the palace and coming straight to them. Her face showed a bit of surprise, but also anger at whatever she had heard. Likely her aunt and sister sent a magic message. She took to a knee and heard Jason doing the same just behind her, leaving her stunned. But she didn't get to ask him why he did so before her mother spoke. "Princess, I have been told that your—" Her mother spoke, then paused as her mind made a connection over whatever the report could mean. Ranger had completely destroyed the West Gatehouse and also killed and retrieved the head of Litharden, a justice done finally for the sacking of Kiwul. However, it seems you and your ranger have disregarded proper decorum and honor when speaking with my sister, so I'm going to give you a chance to make this clear. Leani wasn't sure what to do or what to say, but her ears picked up a click of Jason's tongue and gave him a small wave of her hand for him to speak. "We apologize to you, Your Majesty. We had chosen to approach the issue with my understanding of warfare," he said in the calm but hardened tone of a veteran knight. "When we arrived, I found the situation dire. The morale was terrible because of the long siege along with the depleted food supply. Moreover, the state of readiness for the defenders to sally out was near non-existent. Lastly, the Duchess and her council had no apparent wish to solve the situation, and by my assessment, she was intentionally allowing the siege to carry on. Princess Leani said little, however. I could not let the situation carry on. Your armies need to hold the borders, not be tied down in a long siege. I had pointed out her failures and opened the path to a swift and decisive victory." She noted the careful report he had made. He was painting her aunt as the fault, and himself as the one to break decorum. "Before we departed, I had told her that if the siege was not finished in a day, then I would return and mount the next attack on my own, Your Majesty." "I see. You had taken my orders with your understanding of your people's way of war," the Queen said slowly. Then she shifted a bit. Then you did exactly as you were summoned to do?" She then continued in a calm yet sincere tone. "I have misjudged your ranger, Princess Leani, as an acknowledgement of this grand task done. For now, I hereby mark you as the 12th princess, and grant you use of the Cloamentar estate as a home and base for the army your ranger will build for us. Continue to serve with the pride and honor of my name." Leani felt a shudder and the joy of the moment carrying throughout her. "Yes, Your Majesty," she said quickly to keep herself from losing her composure before her mother. Noticing her mother walking away, she was stuck on her knee for a few seconds longer. She sucked in a deep breath, her eyes watering at the overwhelming euphoria she felt right now. Her mother, the Queen, has not only noticed her properly but also raised her rank. She was no longer the 16th, no longer the last of her sisters. "Princess, are you okay?" Jason asked from beside her, making her look up at him. His face showed happiness for some reason, but she nodded. "Yes, thank you. I was not ready to be rewarded like this," she said quickly and noticed he was still on his knee too. "Why did you bend the knee?" Jason looked down at his leading foot, and she followed his gaze and noticed that the only part of him that did face her mother was his upper body. His knee and legs were pointed to her. "I bend my knee to my chosen leader," he said after a second. "And my leader had bent the knee to the Queen, so I did so to maintain your honor and station, that is all." Leani stared up at him for a few seconds before she lost control and let out a laugh, losing her balance a bit as she did, but found him quickly catching her and keeping her from falling over, which elicited more laughter from her, making her eyes water a bit more. After a few long seconds, she regained a bit of control and looked up at him. His expression was different, not one she had seen him make. His eyes soft and gentle, the way they flickered quickly about her face, his face not showing any emotion she could recognize, no fear or anger, not pain or discomfort, not his battle state when he fought, nor the deranged look he took when he thought about the Chiantics, not even the look of wonderment over some crazy thing he made. But this expression, for some reason, felt enlightening to her hearts, like she had nothing to fear at this second, and she wanted to know what this meant and why he was looking at her like this. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked, but felt a bit betrayed as her cheeks felt a fresh wave of blood pull into them. Jason's cheeks shifted to a redder hue and he looked away a bit. Sorry, Princess. I was just thinking you look really nice when you are laughing, and your, smile is really lovely," he said, while hiding his face from her as he stood up and lifted her to her feet, but his voice was warm and sincere. She pulled a bit away. Thank you." She struggled to get out, her heart's partly deafening, and her mind not really ready for this, for him to say that, but trained practice in noble bearing called her back. "I mean, thank you for the favor, however. I will withhold any entrustment for now," she suddenly added in a calm and rehearsed tone, but she noticed a bit of sadness in his expression as she spoke. But he smiled after a second. "Yeah, sorry if that was out of line. How about we go to that estate and take a look around?" he said, then looked to the carriage and walked away, shaking his head. Leani watched him for a second, but followed behind him. The estate they were given was one of the smaller ones that the royal family owned, with 2 floors and 15 rooms, a hall to host parties, and a fairly large parcel of land attached to it. And she was delighted. Her former home, which was generously gifted to her on her return from adventuring, was a fort off in the far north side of the nation, and while it was hers, it was awful. But she snapped to Jason as he made a monotone note as he stared up and around the estate. "This is perfect. How big are the grounds?" he asked, as the gates were opened to them by magic. About 7 farms," Leani said, but noticed him look a bit shocked. Then as he pulled the carriage up to the door, he deactivated it before climbing out. "Your mother said we can use it to build the army I plan to make, right?" he asked as he looked around. "Yes, I shall make a call for volunteers tomorrow. Is there any qualities we should aim for?" she asked as she came around the carriage, keeping her eyes trained on him. She noted his face scrunch up a bit, like it does when he thinks about something important. Then he looked up over to her and smiled. "We want those who can count, doesn't matter how high, also anyone that can read maps. Also, they need to be fit without the use of magic. Oh, men and women, I will train both. I'm not wasting my time with only half the population pool for recruits. I will need 25 that can read and write for now. We can recruit the rest later," he said, then walked towards the doors and went inside. Leani followed a bit behind him. The estate was being looked after and had been cleaned recently. However, the furniture was still covered in cloth, and it was dark for the most part inside. But the entry hall was spacious and well-made and decorated. "Thinking about it, we may not be able to house 200 warriors here," she said aloud as she thought about the layout of the estate house. It had 15 bedrooms in both the east and west wings, split between 2 floors, while the north wing housed the library, an arcanum, banquet hall, dining room, and kitchen. "Yeah, it would be hard, but I am thinking that if we make a few rooms into barracks for the basic soldiers, have 5 or 6 share a room, it will be fine, or we could have a new building added to the land," he said as he looked around. However, the sounds of a rushing Faineyes came from outside. Drawing both of them back out, she noticed a rider bearing her mother's heraldry riding up to them. "Princess Leani, Captain Jason, Her Majesty has a task for you. The town of Osmer is being approached by a Nogard of Earth. You are to depart now and slow its advance until the Duchess Lashan can arrive and slay it." "Do you accept this task?" the rider said quickly. She looked at Jason, and his face furrowed like he was thinking it over, but he looked at her after a second and nodded, as a plan formed in his mind on how to confront the beast. So she looked back to the rider. "Yes, we do, however, inform my mother that we will slay the monster before it can even reach the walls," she said, and the rider wheeled his mount and rode off, holding the banner high. She turned to Jason after realizing that he may have not planned to kill the monster. "Can you kill it?" "Not sure, but if your spell that lets me understand what he said is right, I believe so. I would have to see the thing first," he said as he walked over to the carriage and climbed in, which got her to quickly follow. As they drove, she wondered why the Nogard had shown up, and how it got so far into the nation's interior without anyone noticing. It was a giant monster about as high as most city walls, and 3 times longer. Moreover, it wasn't known to be a silent creature. "So this, Nogard, is it like what I think it is?" Jason asked as they moved down the road that was built to connect Shrekki and Osmer. "Well, I am not sure. What do you think it is?" she asked back, as whatever word he said was changed to this world's creature. "Well, massive reptile, Wings that let it fly, it can breathe fire, ice, poison, or lightning might be able to use magic. Something like that, he said. Leani couldn't hide her fear at the idea of such a monster. Sure, a Nogard was terrifying, but it couldn't fly or use magic. Moreover, it had no breath weapon like salamanders, yet he agreed to go when he thought he would be fighting that. Higher planes, no. A Nogard is a reptile, like you said, and it is about the size of the estate house. It has no breath weapon or wings. Moreover, there is no record of a Nogard of Earth using magic. However, because it is a Nogard of Earth, it will have a hard hide that can't be cut easily, and will have covered itself in hard rocks to add to its protection. Oh, good. That makes fighting it way easier, he said nonchalantly as they came around a bend and the town beyond. But he slowed the carriage as a crowd of people were walking their way. However, she didn't take her eyes off him, her mind not willing to accept his statement of battling a Nogard to be easier than whatever he spoke of. Though she could see why he thought that, she doubted anyone could fight the monster he described, but she had to find out why. What is your plan? Jason smiled to himself mostly before looking over to her. Remember that giant I summoned last night? The one you said looks like a knight of some house? Leani thought it over, and she remembered. The 16 to 17 yards tall giant he summoned after trying for the better part of an hour, screaming like a lunatic to himself until he got it. It was a hunched-over monster, with a monster-sized battle staff in one of what she had assumed was an arm, and a sword of jagged teeth in the other. But it was covered in awe-inspiring plates like that of a knight, with a great helm on its face, its feet large enough to crush anything or anyone it stepped on, and its overall form looked a bit out of place with most of the things he made that night. However, the markings it had were similar to the massive axe and disintegration battle staff he had made yesterday morning. The thing you called a holy knight? He nodded. I am not sure I can use it, but it's the biggest thing I can make. And it also gave me a wicked headache, so I think I'll be fine today. I think a limit I have is based on the overall weight of what I am summoning, he said as they got up to the open gates. Also, I can't climb up into it easily from the ground, so I figured jumping on from a wall would be easier. She looked at him with a glare, but faltered as her wish to point out that magic could be used was moot because of his nature. Instead, she thought about this morning at the siege. Will I be able to talk with you? She asked with a bit of nervousness. Let me summon the Holy Knight. Then I will see if I can handle giving you something to let us keep talking, okay? He said with a smile. As he pulled up to one set of stairs, they both got out and started to go up, only to be blocked at the top by a group of actually disciplined guards. Move. I am the 12th princess and am here to help. I need to speak with the captain, she said in a tone that called for them to try and stop her, and her efforts were rewarded as they parted. The captain in charge of the defense was staring out at the distant tree line where a flight of cham took off. Are you the one in charge? Leani asked as they reached into earshot range, but was shocked as the captain turned around, and her face of worry broke to joy, a sentiment she understood, as the captain was Waina, a friend and fellow adventurer from before the war, and didn't hesitate to give her a hug. Oh, Leani, it is good to see you. Last I heard your fortress was razed by a monster of some kind, Waina said as she held her tight for a second, then pulled back, fear and anxiety on her face. But you have to leave. It's not safe here. There is a Nogard on its way. Leani smiled with reassurance and gestured a hand to Jason. Actually, we are here to help. We just need you to spread the word that I am sending out a monster of my own to slay the beast. Waina looked over to Jason and her face shifted to confusion. What can he do? She asked after a second. Leani looked over and gave Jason a nod, watching as he walked up to the crenellations of the wall and climbed up onto one of the gaps. Stretching out his hand, he made the giant monster of his own appear. Then Leani spoke up. That is his armor and weapons. He will be going out to slay the Nogard, and then he will return. To Waina, who like everyone else was stunned, as the size of the massive form rose about 4 yards over them. She looked over to Jason as he stepped down and walked over, summoning a backpack with a long cord that ended in a small device like the one from the carriage, the same type that she could speak into. Yeah, I feel fine. I guess it depends on the overall amount of weight, so the carriage, this, and lightning armor is not my limit. he said with a smile, then wheeled on his heel and ran at the gap close to where a battle staff next to the head of the giant was. Jumping hard, he cleared the gap with ease and landed on where a ladder was on the upper part of the giant, just over the head to the right. He quickly climbed up and opened a door at the top, climbing into the form and closing the door behind him. They stood in silence for a minute. He had said he wasn't sure he could use it, but he was willing to try. She hoped he could, but was readying herself for him to fail. However, just as it reached past a minute, the giant shuddered as smoke bellowed out of the top of metal chimneys, followed by blasts of fire and the glow of blue light under the helmed head of the monster. "Ha, this feels a bit weird, but I think I got it." Jason's voice rang out and boomed a bit over the town before it came out of the backpack he had given her. "Okay, I am ready. Also, I have already found the Nogard with my battlefield sensory magic, so I'll be heading off unless you want a show, princess." Leani thought it over before holding up the device off the backpack and spoke back. "I think you can wait for it. How far is it now?" she said into the device and watched as the giant turned. "About 3,520 yards right now, but it is closing. It will be here in half an hour." Jason's voice calls back from the pack. Leani looked up a bit to the head of the giant armor and smiled before speaking into the device. "Wait for it and test the weapons on the trees. Get used to them. Wayna and I will start organizing support for you," she said, and noticed the head actually nod back before he answered. "Sounds good. Also, don't forget to tell them who you are and what I am." Leani smiled a bit as he made the giant armor turn and walk away before stepping up beside Wayna and gently closing her agape mouth. "So, send runners to all the guards, let them know he is on our side, and get as many ranged attackers as possible here," she said in a reassuring tone.